Welcome to Educate to Self-Regulate, a podcast for educational leaders, teachers, and students, where in less than 20 minutes, we unpack educational research to support you and your students to become better learners.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Educate to Self-Regulate. Today, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Munday. Lauren, how are you? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Shai. I'm excited to be here.
It's so great to have you here. Actually, I had, I don't know if you know Michael Rosenbrock. Mike was on the podcast yesterday, and he's also from the Amber Press family. And I had this moment when you were coming on today. I was like, oh, Lauren's a fellow Amber Press.
Yes, we're meeting our colleagues, our like people.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Lauren, your book, Mastering Your Mind for Success, that came out last year.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you for sending me a copy because I enjoyed reading it and have been thinking a lot about the synergy between your work and my work. But I'm thinking for our listeners who may not know you, Lauren, are you happy to give us a little bit of background on your journey in education?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a PE and health teacher background and have been teaching for about 15 years in predominantly secondary. The last couple of years, while I've been taking this new venture on of running Think Set Go, designing Think Set Go and presenting Think Set Go, which is a new it's like a workshop that I've been running and a business I've been developing to bring a new subject into schools, basically. As I've been doing that, I've been doing a lot of CRT as well. So I've been to schools all throughout, mostly Southeast Melbourne. And my background is in doing a lot of sports. So I've kind of pulled some things together. I did a master's in educational leadership and have brought everything together to do Think Set Go, which is now my new baby that I'm delivering to schools.
And Lauren, I vaguely remember that you have a professional sports background, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I would say semi-professional. I grew up doing about 12 different sports. And as I approached later, about 28, 30 years old, I thought I want to give a new sport a go and kind of challenge myself like we tell our students to be challenged, but I kind of wasn't doing anything for myself. So started AFL Women's, and that's when I reached the Victorian VFL League. That was my experience at high level sport, and I learned a lot, which is exactly why I'm pretty much developed an interest in this area. And that's why we're here today, because the mindset stuff is a next level game that we need to learn because it changes everything.
Amazing, Lauren. Now, you mentioned Think, Set, Go as it's your business, it's your workshop. It's almost this approach that is underpinning the work you're doing. Can you walk us through what exactly is Think, Set, Go?
Yeah, sure. So the reason why I think Set Go to me is important is because we often talk about goal setting, but that's kind of the easy part because we're usually doing that when we're relaxed and we're just kind of planning out what we want. But it's the goal pursuit element that I find the toughest challenge when things aren't going how we planned, when we need motivation, but we can't find it, when we need consistency, but we don't have good routine set up. And I thought, well, what's an easy framework that would help me and help others to kind of deal with the goal pursuit? And that's when I thought of, well, as a PE teacher, ready, set, go is a really common phrase, but ready and set is kind of the same thing. So I thought we need to change that. It's more, how do you think? How do you set yourself up? And then how do you go and actually do what needs to be done? So whilst the business is called Think, Set, Go, it's actually a framework on how I speak to people about some really good strategies on how to pursue a goal.
And this is the connection to self-regulated learning, isn't it? Because goal setting is fundamental to self-regulated learning. It's a core part of what we would call the forethought or the planning phase. And you can't self-regulate if you don't have a goal, because what are you regulating against if you don't have clarity on that goal? And so that's critically important. But then you've talked about a range of thinking processes that allow you to actually pursue a goal, or attain an outcome, etc. So it seems like we're really talking the same thing with slightly different language. But
Yeah, exactly. And I think also a lot of what you're doing is sharing these concepts with teachers. And a lot of what I'm doing is sharing these concepts with students. So the language will be different, and we're trying to give them a different perspective. And maybe, we align, but we come from different angles, which is cool.
it's quite complementary what we're doing in terms of the work, really, because as you said, I'm heavily doing work with teachers and leaders, and you're doing quite a lot of work at this point in time with students, even though you work with teachers as well, which I love, I
Yeah.
love doing that as well because it's so important. I often advocate to teachers that we need to explicitly teach these tools and these strategies to our young people so that they can actually start to use themselves as part of this kind of learning how to self-regulate process. And you obviously do this in your workshops with students. Are there any tools or strategies that, say, a teacher in our audience who's listening right now could essentially take and use or teach to their young students or young people in their classrooms?
Yeah, so we were talking earlier about the idea that we're basically teaching a subject that isn't in the curriculum as such. It's in the personal and social capabilities. You know, it might be touched on here and there, but it's not its own standalone subject. So how do you implement these important concepts into young people's lives? And what I do is I gather some of the words and then I break it down into an easy to understand visual or activity. For example, if I was to talk about perspective and the idea that we can see things from multiple angles if we're willing to adjust focus, I then would perhaps show them something like an interesting video. There's videos of illusion and you think one thing's happening, but it's another thing. So whilst it might have nothing to do with school, what you're actually doing is teaching the concept. An example of that with perspective might be a little magic trick that I've learned to do with the students, which is you hold a tissue and you have one person come out to the front of the room and they sit on a chair. You hold that tissue in front of them and you say, okay, I'm going to switch hands and I want you to tell me which hand you think the tissue is in. And meanwhile, you're lifting your hands up over their head, putting it back down, switching hands, lifting up the tissue, putting it back down. They can't see the tissue. They just think it's going up and down, up and down. Meanwhile, you throw it over their head. So you've actually let go of the tissue. It's gone. They look at your hands and they guess which one it's in. It's not in either because it got thrown over their head. They didn't hear it drop though, so they didn't realize that it's not there anymore. Everyone else watching can see that you threw the tissue over their head. So from the students' perspective that are watching, they know exactly where it went. From the student sitting in the chair, they thought it was in your hands and they can't see it anymore. They think you're magic. But really what it shows is our perspective is only through our lens. If we can start to like ask other people for their opinion or change how we view something, we can learn a whole different side to the situation. You then apply that to the set component, which is, okay, let's set this up into our life. At what part of your life could you look at something differently? And we hone in on what angle do we want to take with homework? What angle do we want to take with tests when we have performance? Maybe there's a bit of performance anxiety. They're right with working in class, but when it comes to committing to an exam, it changes everything. Well, maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing here. So we can narrow it down. And then I'll talk about, okay, that's really where it's important. When we have a goal, we want to narrow it down to where we actually want to put our attention. Another good one that you could show is you put your hand up and you say, students, everyone put your hand up in the air. Okay, I want you to shake your hand in the air and then put it in a fist and place it on your chin. And as they place it on you're placing it on your forehead. So they're watching you, they might do it on their forehead instead of their chin because their attention was torn. Am I doing what she said or what I see? And it shows that we have options. Where are you going to place your attention? Because you could simply be placing it on the wrong thing. So whilst I'm talking about these visuals, I hope that makes sense. But I think visuals are very important. Obviously, we have different learners. The setup phase is like, okay, how does this fit into life? And that could be like, can you create a streak? Can you just do something for the next 5 days? What's that going to be? And you decide as a group, like different people will come up with different goals for the 5 days. And then it's like, okay, how do you feel if you did achieve it? How do you feel if you didn't? You get them to feel what it's like to succeed at something or not. And the idea is you want them to succeed at something so they get the feeling of that felt good. That's addictive. And then that's the way that you could teach that. And then the go is like, how can you get yourself out of your comfort zone? How can you do something that lets you know you're actually still safe? You're doing something novel or you're doing something like, can you call your dog the wrong name? It could be something really simple, but do it on purpose to show I'm actually still okay. I stuffed up, but I'm all right. And once they learn that feeling of taking challenges on, that will transfer to other things. But if they're not used to taking on a challenge, then it's very hard to take on big challenges. We've got to start with the small ones. So that's kind of how I think I teach Think, Set, Go. And it can be applied to any subject area because it's all just very human concepts.
Lauren, I feel like this is a lovely kind of moment for me to inject for my listeners that the podcast is going on YouTube
Oh, yeah.
in the sense
Right.
that the videos. So if you want to see Lauren doing her hand movements and popping her hand on her forehead, you absolutely could. Because I got so much out of that as I was watching you and listening,
Oh, good.
because I was able to take in kind of additional information. But I know for a lot of our listeners, they won't be able to see you. And so if you want to see Lauren in action, jump on the YouTube channel and check.
That's why I did it, Shy, because I want everyone to get on board of your YouTube channel.
I appreciate that. There were so many things that were popping up. I love that you're trying to get the students that you're working with to feel something. Makes me think of, is it Maya Angelou who said, people don't remember what you tell them, they remember how you made them feel. And something along those, I'm butchering the quote, but something along
I know what you mean.
I love that. I always say, actually, even when I'm working with staff, I said, I create an experience for them to, one of the key things is when we're teaching these strategies is to give the students an experience of the strategy and, post opportunity for practice, they can reflect on that, where they're sharing how the strategy made them feel, how did it work for them, and so on and so forth. Because those students who've had a positive experience with a strategy are more likely to use it moving forward in some way, shape, and form. I like that. And I can see how creative you're being with helping young people access some of these quite complex concepts like perspective taking. I love that.
I think that's the PE background. I think it's like I'm used to just maybe that's how I learn. So I've been thinking in that way. It's important that when we're sharing this content with students, we're giving them all the different ways of seeing the information so that it hits home with all the different learners. But yeah, I love the practical and I love the visual side.
This is a subject area that isn't taught and we have to implement it in other ways. And you're obviously trying to do that through these workshops. How are, like, when you're not there, what are you seeing in terms of the way schools are navigating this important body of knowledge? Are the teachers teaching it within their subject domains? Is there a pastoral care type standalone experience where there's a set teacher who's running this kind of program? With the schools you're working with, what are you seeing in terms of the way they're tackling this challenge?
So far, the way that I've been implementing it is through student workshops where I leave them with a handbook that they work towards in their mentor time, in their homeroom time. So generally, the homeroom teachers are at the physical workshop. Then those same homeroom teachers are in the classroom when they do the booklet. But those homeroom teachers also teach their own subjects. So it's like incidentally, I'm hoping that those subject teachers are using this. What's essential about learning these concepts is that the teachers should be looking at how to apply it in their own life too. If the teacher's applying it in their own life, they'll become better at teaching it to the students. So this is human content. This isn't student based. I'm just trying to word it in a way that's student based, but it's all adult stuff. Like it's all stuff I've learned through growing up, being in different competitive sporting arenas and in schools, trying to cope myself in life. I'm a mother of two and I'm actually pregnant again. And so there'll be another one at the end of the year, which is new. It's quite new. But I'm like, okay, how would I cope with this? How do I cope with this? Generally, the situations aren't unique. They're unique to us, but they're quite general. And so if students can understand, teachers go through this stuff because they're adults, we're all human. So if you can learn this as a child, it should help you as an adult. If you can learn it as an adult, it should help you right now in your life. And that can help to make it a smoother transfer of knowledge. If the adult is taking it on board and trying to use it themselves, they become better teachers.
And you've got, as you said, you're working sometimes directly with the teachers, but often you've got teachers in your workshops with students, and hopefully they're benefiting from that as well, isn't it?
That's the aim. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think part of the reason why I probably work quite a lot with teachers is once teachers, even if they're in your workshops and seeing it, um, they potentially have the opportunity to influence multiple cohorts of students post, our sort of workshops with them. There's this kind of sustainability piece that rings true to me in working quite directly with the teachers. So I think that's beneficial. Now I'm conscious of time, Lauren.
Sure.
As I said to you, I was like, this podcast moves quickly. Um, A lovely little segment on the reg. So here, Lauren, I'd love to ask you, what is something you do? What's the strategy that you use to help you self-regulate as a learner in everyday life?
Yeah, I have been thinking about this, and the biggest issue I have with my own self-discipline is getting out of the shower at the moment because it is cold down here in Melbourne. I mean, you're in Canberra too, you know what I'm talking about. And I can't get out of the shower. Like I need some reason to get out of the shower. And I was thinking, what's the reason? And I figured out it's one or the other. Either something's going to motivate me to get out, to go, which could be like, I'm looking forward to something. It's dinner time. Yeah, I want to go eat, or there's a TV show on, or I've got to get to work because this is happening. Or it's a fear motivation where I've got to get out because the water bill is going to be too high, or the kids might be fighting by the time I get out, or, I've just been in here so long, I'm going to be a wrinkled mess. So it's one or the other motivation. And to be honest, whatever works, I think go with it. It doesn't really matter what gets you to do the thing, as long as you're doing the thing that you know you should be doing.
Yeah, so you're coming in your internal kind of conversation, you're coming up with a reason why you should get out of the shower.
Yeah, I'm like, what is it's going to get me out right now?
Yeah,
This water bill is going to be so high. Yeah, so it's just interesting to notice.
I love that. I shared with some educators last week that I sort of define motivation as a reason to act.
Yeah.
And you are having that conversation with yourself.
I just can't get out otherwise.
I'll share a strategy that I use. Actually, the shower situation is interesting actually, because I've been dabbling with the last 30 seconds of my shower being a cold water shower. I've read in multiple kind of avenues the power of a sort of cold water shower. And
Well, that would get me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually am consciously like, imagine that, like you're in this beautiful warm shower and my wife thinks I'm crazy, where I will consciously go, right, I'm just about finished. I'll just turn the hot water off and then I'll just stand there in the cold water for 30 seconds.
Well, we all know the psychological benefits of that, especially if you need to be alert. But I actually said to my husband, can you get me out of here? I'm stuck. I can't get out. It's so warm. And he comes in, turns the cold on. And I'm like, all right, I'm out. So you can look at it either way. It'll actually help you, and it will also help you get out.
Help you get out. Multiple benefits. Amazing. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I know it's been a long time in the coming, and we've chatted many times about trying to navigate our schedules to make this work. So it's nice to finally have the chat. So Lauren, before you go, can I just double check, where can our listeners get some further information on your work, if they're interested in your work, potentially unpack some of these strategies that you've shared? Where can we direct them?
So the book is a helpful resource for teachers that want to have some hands-on, like written activities the kids could do in their classrooms, but also it's a great handbook for students if you have a gift, want to gift it to someone or get a class set. So that's called Mastering Your Mind for Success. Or you could look on my website for some information. You could get in touch via email or just mostly on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible, Lauren Munday on LinkedIn.
Amazing, Lauren. And is the best place to go for the book your website?
Yep, thinksetgo.com.au.
Amazing. And if they want a signed copy, just to hit you up, hey, just in terms of...
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to just chat, just see what people need help with. And yeah, if I can support you, let me know.
Fantastic. And like I said, I just think there's a beautiful synergy between our work. We're just taking it, as you use the word angles, like we're just taking a slightly different perspective and angle on it. But either way, we're working towards a shared goal. So I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation, Lauren, and we'll talk soon.
Congrats on the work you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lauren.
If you are a new listener to the podcast, make sure you share it with friends, save it, or subscribe. If you have any questions, and we really want to hear from our listeners, if you have any questions or comments, send us a DM through either of our social media channels, which is Twitter and Instagram at Ed to Self Reg. As always, to you and everyone else out there, keep regulating.